Hi, and welcome back to Marketing Mark. So, today we're going to talk about inspiring creatives to do famous work. And when I say famous work, I mean work that is on the morning shows, Good Morning America, the Today Show, work that is winning big awards, work that is super effective, that's selling in double digit numbers, that's moving brand metrics in double digit numbers, if I could talk today, and work that generally the public knows about. People know, like people on the street that you talk to. Now, I'm talking about big brand work. There's other times where we can talk about little niche work that people can do, and that's fine. But this is about you have a big brand, you got to talk to a lot of people, you got to talk to all of America or a lot of America, a broad swath of America. You want to do work that a lot of people love. Now, obviously, you're not going to talk to every single group or segment, cohort, what have you, but you are going to need to set that understanding of that group that you're going to talk to. And with that, you usually start with data. So let's start there. First, you need to have a deep understanding of what this customer loves. And usually that starts with understanding what movies are they watching? What are they buying at your store, at your place of business? What services are they using? Understanding these things. Everything from what I'll call the standard things that we're going to know in business. Like I said, the brand metrics, what their beliefs are, Ipsos studies, anything to do with kind of the standard brand metrics data, sales data. But then, as I mentioned before, like movies, what are they watching? What are their favorite TV shows? Now, be careful with some of these things, right? Because what you'll find is, like for instance, back in the day, CSI shows like CSI Miami, those types of shows, all of America loved them. So it really wasn't that insightful to say, all right, that's a type of show that they like to watch because everyone did. You need to start to understand what specifically your customer liked to watch. Like for instance, if you have a customer that is 25 to 54 years old, largely blue collar. Maybe they're working as a waiter or waitress. Maybe they're working as a construction person, whatever they're doing, but they're making under $75,000 a year. That's going to be a very specific mindset. And you really need to know that mindset. And one of the biggest mistakes that creatives and marketers in general do is they take what they believe in their life and they apply it to their customer. And we see this most in retail where everyone starts chasing Target. And why is that? A lot of that has to do with the fact that you have college educated, typically from wealthy families, or at least wealthier than the general population, that shop at Target, or at least did shop at Target, and they believe like that's the way to go for the brand. When really, a lot of America isn't like that. There's a fair amount of America that thinks Target is, quite frankly, bourgeois. It's like, snobby or whatever. Like they wear almost a badge on their shoulder that they may shop at Walmart, or they may shop somewhere else, anywhere but Target. So to chase Target for a lot of those consumers is a bad idea, but I can't tell you how many retailers I've consulted for, worked for, that are chasing that. Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, great example as well. There's a Dunkin' Donuts crowd, typically a little more blue collar, maybe not all the time. There's the Starbucks crowd, typically kind of white collar professionals, just typically speaking, very different mindsets there. And, I don't really want to get into politics here, but I would say it should, with this how our country is right now, you should have that in the back of your mind of what your consumer, customer is, belief states are within politics. And again, not that you're going to get political in the ads, but you can certainly like avoid a lot of potholes by understanding that. The third thing within this that I'd say is you really have to understand a lot about our culture. So become a student of culture, of different cultures. Be interested in people that are not like you. That's really important to doing great work for brands, because the more you understand about people, the more you deep dive into their likes, their dislikes, what drives them, what motivates them, you can do better advertising for them, better marketing at the end of the day. And you'll ask better questions. You'll start to understand them in a deeper way. So first, it's to do famous work, it's understanding. And it's understanding beyond the standard brand metrics. I think I've made that point clear. The second thing that's very important is start to pull references. And again, those references can be movies, because video's huge right now, right? Digital media video's huge, TV commercials video's huge, and it's all about that storytelling. So what movies are they watching? What TV shows are they watching? Because if you knew they indexed compared to general population, watching a certain type of maybe sophomoric humor, you would lean into that sophomoric humor. And especially if that number was really big compared to general population. So looking for references and keeping those references and building a library of references that not only lives on your computer, right? And not only lives like emailing, just randomly emailing, like, check this out that they did, check this out that someone did. The approach needs to be more methodical than that. It just can't be like, throw something over the fence and hope your creatives understand it or like it or react to it in any smart way. So the methodical approach was start out by saying, you're gonna build a reference library and then make that come to life, right? You need to create like that journey of what the creative will look like. Sometimes you're going to build that as a big pitch and pitch it to the whole organization, but sometimes that may not be the way to go. Maybe you can't sell it through the organization that way. Maybe your organization is not, or your client, if you're on the agency side, is not going to be able to come together in a way that is going to approve something, and maybe you've run into those brick walls in the past. So the important thing in this part of it is to build, if your client or if your company is kind of hard to get things through, sometimes it's good to go baby steps, but within that, you should still know where you want to end up. And sometimes the journey will start out going up like this, and then maybe it takes a little step down, and then, it goes a couple steps up, but ultimately, where you want to end up. And that's the most important point I'm trying to make. But your team needs to know that as well. And so creating a space where, remote work, this gets a little more difficult, but typically you're going to be in some kind of office setting some days a week. And within that, creating a wall or, wherever where you can kind of put up the vision of what this looks like and keep it alive. Have folks like on your team have that work, printed out, not just like on their computer in some folder tucked away. Maybe you have the team put it as their screensaver, kind of a mood board, if you will. Those types of things keep it alive in their mind. And then start the journey, right? Like, what's the first step? Is the first step, just a slight color change? You just start changing colors along the way. And then, is it, maybe a couple social media pieces that you create, a couple small videos that you create, and it shows a win, because part of this is figuring it out. A lot of times people, again, with pitch situations, it's a different thing, and sometimes that needs to happen. But the tough thing with that is it forces everyone to swing real big. And sometimes when you do that, you completely miss. And that can be a challenge with doing things that way, especially in an organization that, quite frankly, has never done good work before. There's a journey with not only your team, there's a journey with the rest of the organization, maybe internally at your agency, maybe internally at the organization or company you work for. So creating that mood board, that understanding, that journey, and make sure everyone understands it, and creating methodical steps to get there. And again, start kind of small, start to test and learn, because you yourself aren't gonna know exactly where to go with it at first. It is a little bit of that journey, like I said, where it's kind of like a couple steps forward, step back, 4 steps forward, couple steps back. It takes that time. So what else? So let's talk about goal setting within this, right? So goal setting, really important with anything, and need to look at it as goals usually should be looked at, which is what are the short-term, mid-term, long-term goals to achieve getting to famous work. So one thing is like setting those reviews at least once a month, if not more. Does this work compare, how does this work compared to those references that, that everyone's aligned to, that everyone's seen, that support those data points, that some people in the tighter team have a line behind that you're going to push out to your customer, your consumer. So setting those goals is obviously really important. And part of that, and this part for some will be controversial, or they may not like it, but the fact of the matter is award shows are a big part of the top level of the advertising game. And if you look at the most famous work, the most famous brands, the best brands on the planet, they are also winning creative awards. And the fact is, if you're not, maybe you're not entering them, and that's kind of one thing, but I would say it's a cop-out for a lot of brands to say, oh, we don't care about awards, we care about effective advertising. Well, tell me Nike isn't effective. Tell me IBM isn't effective. Tell me KPMG isn't effective. These are companies that are all winning a ton of awards. So to me, you cannot play the game, and that's fine. But the fact is, to get great creatives on your team, they want to win awards because that helps their career. And that helps give them visibility down the line. So you'll get better creatives if you start winning awards. That's just the fact. And your brand will be better for it. So that's one reason I look at awards. But within this context, where awards are important is it gives a very kind of realistic / objective view of where the work is at. And because everyone can pat themselves on the back, and believe me, when I worked on some of the big 3 advertising back in the day in Detroit, there were people patting themselves on the back that these were the best ads, and they were laughing at things that, quite frankly, they would never laugh at if someone in their company didn't do that ad. So in some ways, companies can start living a lie that way. And that can be a big downfall for the company. So having an objective viewpoint from outside the company, from outside the organization, is important for so many reasons. It keeps it honest. And there's certain things about award shows that I don't like, and I can get into a deep dive of that in the future. But by and large, when you look at it, again, the best, most successful companies are in them, and they're winning them. So, take that for what it is. So one goal setting could be, you need to win this set of awards. And maybe it's a very specific type of award within your industry. There's specific creative awards for banking. There's specific creative awards for retail, on and on. Or it could be one of the top award shows like the Cannes Lions. So that's probably, most people would say that's the top in the world. If you're winning a Lion, you're doing the best work in the world. So looking at awards through the lens of saying, you know what, the expectation is this team will win this specific award, because awards all have categories, and some categories are, quite frankly, easier than others. So if you're in like a social media post category and that type of thing, sometimes those are a little easier, like banner ads. Those are a little bit easier, you know, to do a big famous TV commercial. Those are the really hard categories. At any rate, setting those goals and make it realistic. You know, if the organization and the team isn't quite there yet, you can't say they're going to win a Lion. It's just almost just not going to happen unless you have some kind of carte blanche, approval within the organization to almost do what you want, which almost never happens. And then you yourself have to know how to do it as well. And sometimes that's a journey for yourself anyway to get there, unless you're someone that just has won many and many before, and you know, that's a whole different story. Anyway, the other award show that I think is really important to look at is called the Effies. And the Effies is an award show that not only looks at creative, but also judges the award on advertising effectiveness. That's probably the award that almost no one can argue. If you're winning that award, you're doing what the organization should love, and you're also, you know, getting the word out to great creatives to come work at your organization. You're inspiring your team that way, and you're setting a goal. Now, again, some of these awards, you really got to think like where the team is at, because, you know, it'd be very uninspiring to tell a team that has never won an award, that needs some, you know, some nurturing, to say, you know, in 6 months we have to win a Lion. Like, I can tell you, it's almost never going to happen. So set that piece with realistic expectations. Again, there's award shows that are that top level, and there's some that are kind of, well, I'll call lower level, but still they do have an objective point of view, and that's what I think you're looking for with an award show, to keep you and your organization honest about the kind of work that you're doing. So that's an award show piece. That's setting a goal with that piece of it. But then you yourself should be setting goals of, like, you know, again, where that journey is and whatever path you're going to take on that journey. Make sure the team understands that, and make sure they're checking those boxes along the way. They are doing, let's say, 3 social media posts that kind of are in this type of humor or have this type of heartfelt emotion. And I should talk about that for just a pinch, but it's a whole nother video. Facts lead to conclusion. Emotion leads to action. So really, most advertising that you see out there gets you to a conclusion, but it really doesn't get people to move. If you want people to move, you need to understand emotional triggers that are going to get them to move. And another way to say it is, facts steer us, but emotion drives us. We see it in politics, we see it in brands, we see it, you know, in relationships. All those things, like, it's just human nature. It's the way our mind works. So you really have to set that tone for the emotion that you're going after. And again, that should come from the references. That should come from the data. That should come from data that shows, like, what these folks are watching. What do they react to? What do they like? What are their likes and dislikes? That comes from you understanding in a deep way, and being almost that archaeologist of understanding who that customer has been, and ideally where that mindset is going, so you could be ahead of that. And that becomes you being a student of that culture, you being a student of that customer. Super important things, right? So defining all those things, and you start to see how these goals start to come together, and setting like those baby steps out of how the brand is going to get to that top part of the journey you're looking for. And quite frankly, some people say like a North Star, but that makes it seem like there's an end. There's never an end to a brand. A brand is a living, breathing thing. It is growing, it is shrinking, it is moving, it is morphing all the time. And those things are based on so many different factors. It could be, in-store employees. You hire a bunch of in-store employees that are different. That's going to drive the brand a different way. If your retail location is maybe in post-peak locations where like that area used to be a hot, cool area, but now it's like, kind of a dead area with strip malls that are half empty, like that speaks to your brand too. So it's not just advertising, but what you're in control of is the advertising. So looking at that through that lens and through the lens of like what the overall brand is within the context of culture is an important part. But back to goal setting, need to do it, need to make sure it's very clear, crystal clear that this is going to happen, because creatives and marketers and people in general can stick their head in the sand. They can ignore. They can just go back to doing things the way they've always done them because it's very easy, and that's no way to drive change. And as a manager of people, that's on you, because ultimately those people report to you. Those are people that you should be inspiring, and if that's not happening, that becomes its own problem. And you just need to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. Did you lay these things out the right way? Did you create a plan that is going to get your team there? Then finally, and I'll kind of end on this piece, is the media piece of things. Because ultimately, you're going to create, and I'm going to make the assumption you know how to execute at a very high level, because that's super important, and finding talent is super important. So that execution thing of your plan is really important, and understanding, like if you're internal at at a company, understanding maybe what should be going out of house and what should stay in-house, what your team's strengths are, and really kind of test and learn with them themselves. Because I've thrown out assignments to a large group of creatives that, quite frankly, had never really won awards before in their life. And I was pretty surprised at 2 or 3 of them that ended up doing some really fantastic work. And what that did is others saw that and they start feeding off that, and then it starts to move. But understanding execution, understanding what should be done where and with who and how and when, all those things are incredibly important. But I'm going to make a little bit of an assumption that as a professional in the field, you have a little bit of a handle on that. And maybe I do a video on that at some point. The last part is media. Understanding media is paramount in doing this. I mean, there is an example of a chicken company that wanted to do chicken tenders as an example, commercial on chicken tenders, and they'd never done a chicken tender commercial before, and they wanted to target young families, and they wanted it to be a little more edgy. So this commercial got pretty edgy, right? And the problem was, they still aired it on Lifetime TV. So you have this edgy commercial on a channel that is like the least edgy. You end up on like the Hallmark Channel and Lifetime TV with a commercial has a professional wrestler throwing a kid against the wall as the humor. You're going to get letters in a bad way. And that is a major problem with the strategy of the media not aligning with the original brief, and the media just kind of going about things the same way. So really understanding the media piece of things, you know, some of the commercials I did that were a little more edgy, I had them air, and they're humorous, right? So I had them air only after 8 p.m. and largely the buys were around late night talk shows, late night comedy shows, you know, Jimmy Fallon and these types of shows where people are in the mindset of seeing that type of thing. Because if they aren't in the mindset, it would be even more jarring. These commercials kind of push the limits anyway, but you put them in a setting, you know, it's too much contrast, right? You want people in a certain mindset when they're watching your commercials. And that goes for digital as well. You know, made sure a lot of the video content was on, again, places where comedy was accepted, places where people were there to enjoy a laugh. And that goes for whatever the emotion is. You know, if it is a heartfelt thing towards women above 45 years old, Hallmark or, you know, Lifetime TV, those could be perfect for something like that, you know, and those could be very award-winning commercials, you know. I'm not at all suggesting that you have to do humor. It's something that I've done well with, but I've also had some award-winning commercials with, you know, that are a little more heartfelt or a little more smart, you know, on those ends of things. But the point is, make sure your media is aligned with your plan. And then within that, how are you flighting that media? And how are you looking at the whole media landscape? So one of the things when we were on a roll of doing some great work is we had the PR team ready to exclusively release the commercial to, for instance, People magazine, exclusively release the commercial to the Today Show. Now the work's gotta be good enough where they're going to care about that in the first place, but that's what the whole journey was about in the first place. So we start there, get that groundswell, and then a couple days later, or the next day, depending on timing, the commercial runs on TV or the commercial is released online. And that combination alone starts to really give that like groundswell, and people are actually looking for it and thinking about it. So creating that kind of media journey is important too, because if you just plow it out, it's okay. But in my view, from what I've seen, because I've done that as well, it's suboptimal, because you know you're losing opportunities of basically free media. When you think about PR, if you're doing it right and you're doing great work that can be famous, that is built the right way, in a campaign that's built the right way, giving media exclusives and through PR is huge, and that can end up really giving that first groundswell where, again, people are looking at it online, people are checking it out, and your views right away. I mean, I've had commercials that within 6 weeks, the views were 30 million views in 6 weeks, right? I've had, you know, elfyourself.com where, you know, the first year it was like through the roof, like tens and tens of thousands and, you know, hundreds of thousands of views of elfyourself.com. And quite frankly, Elf Yourself was a lot earlier in my career, and that wasn't even released all that well. But the media did pick it up, so that was a mega hit of a different level that way. But you can't count on that. You really got to think about what that journey of media is to push that work to be the best it can be out there in the marketplace. And it gives you the opportunity too to tell the story of it and get ahead of anything that could be possibly negative, especially if you're doing something edgy. You want to be ahead of that. You want to create the narrative. There's all these old world sayings about being first to create the narrative, right? And you want to do that. You need to do that. on edgier work especially. Probably on any work it's good because, you know, you can lead the pack. And then there's little tricks you can do as well. Like, you know, when you post on social media, make sure, like, you know, any kind of paid media or whatever you're driving people to from that, make sure it's not only your customer, but kind of the customer that loves you the most, the customer that's going to give you the biggest break on it from the standpoint of, like, you know, I love this brand and this brand just did this cool thing. You know, they're already going to be in a good place. If you end up with some like haters as the first comments, that's not where you want to be. And do whatever you can to make sure that first, you know, as the comments start coming in on you know, video content, try whatever you can do to make sure those first like 100 comments are positive. And there's all sorts of ways to do that, but it's an incredibly important point. Lastly, the best thing you can do is look at this whole thing as a journey, get the team and everyone to understand views, likes, people caring and loving your commercials reflects on the brand. And I've seen double-digit sales by doing this. I've seen, you know, 600% increase in sales. I've seen, you know, for some content that, and even websites I've created, people actually buy pieces of the content because they're, maybe their image is in the content or what have you. And those can be their own, I should say, revenue stream. So there's all sorts of ways to like think about success, and sales is definitely the number one. Brand metrics is super important. And sometimes what you're going to get is, and this is tougher in some organizations that are sales only, and I get that, but sometimes you're going to get the brand metrics up before you're going to see the sales up. But that needs to be a really short tail. You can't have your brand metrics just going up and up and up and sales are doing nothing. You really need to understand, like, why haven't these ads push the sales? And oftentimes I think why that happens is you're not doing what I call product-focused entertainment, so, or service-focused entertainment. It should, at the end of the day, like, the commercial that you do should go back to exactly the point that you're trying to make to sell that product. It needs to be very, very clear what you're trying to do. You know, part of the problem is a lot of these famous commercials that do nothing with sales and get a lot of flack for it is they live in this kind of ethereal area. They live in the ethos, you know, where it's just kind of, you know, not really telling you exactly what you need to do. And obviously I'm not saying, you know, it in a way that you're telling them to go here or there or that. Obviously there's call to actions and all these types of things. But is the commercial really wrapped around promoting the idea? And, you know, of course there can be problems with that. And usually those problems come when the product itself is the problem. And sometimes you see that with launching products. The product never should have been like released into the marketplace in the first place, but it's your job to sell it. So you're doing the best you can. That's a whole different problem. But within what I'm talking about, I think you get the point. You need to have things that are very product focused. You know, there's a famous SOS, you know, that scrubbing little Brillo pad type of thing. And a very simple commercial where you just saw these kind of dishes and plates in the sink all around the country, flash into different ones, and they're clinking and they're making the Morse code of SOS, SOS. Super clear, right? entertaining, interesting, does all the things a great commercial can do or should do. So I hope this helped. I think it will. And I think if you really listen to the spirit of what I'm saying and follow a lot of this advice, you will create better work. It's just, I've lived this through various organizations on the agency side, on the client side, and ultimately this kind of approach really works. So, love to hear your success with it. Please comment below and please subscribe, because I'd love to make more of these videos and help people out. Thanks again. Bye.